Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the ongoing protests and massive repression in Iran. There seems to be a kind of a battle between the citizens of Iran and the government of Iran, and it has taken ominous proportions. According to some reports, thousands and thousands of people has been killed. And of course, there's a lot of media I mean, this is like the war of fog, where there's lack of clarity. Iran is also trying very hard to suppress information from going out of Iran, and we don't know really exactly what is going on, but what little information we are able to glean when occasionally people are able to use Starlink and otherwise and send messages out. We are learning about what's going on in Iran, and of course, some of the statements that are coming out of the government itself. So, in this brief conversations, I'm going to talk about essentially, I want to make four observations and ask three questions. So, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to make four observations and I want to ask three questions. So, my first observation is that this all began like a Gen Z revolution. So, what happened in Iran since 28th of December was essentially that Iran's foreign policy, Iran's posture towards the rest of the world has alienated the country so much that it is now being sanctioned by the two most powerful economies in the world, the US and Europe, and others are often staying away, like India, for example. Every time the Americans say buzz off, India simply stops trading with Iran. So even the global south, or for that matter, except China, which merely trades, who is the only major trader of Iran, and to some extent UAE, which exploits Iran's sanctions. There isn't much trade going on, and the Iranians are alienated. Iran's economy really began to tank after December because of all the new sanctions and pressure from Donald Trump. Iran's currency became half of what it was. So it leads to hyperinflation. People are dissatisfied. They are hopeless. They see a lot of corruption in the country. They don't know. They basically, people are doing what they are supposed to do. They are studying hard. They are working hard. They are dreaming, and they are hoping to have a better future. But what the government does is just alienates itself from the rest of the world. There are no opportunities for the Iranians, and the economy at home is doing so badly that people are simply suffering, especially the middle and lower middle classes have suffered. So the protests started essentially against the economic conditions in Iran. And then that has now swelled to become a demand for fundamental changes. I don't think the Iranian protests are about ideology. The Iranian protests are a cry for help. People have been suffering, they want relief. And if this government cannot provide that, they want somebody else to. So I think that is what is happening. That is my first observation. But the government's response, I think, is just egregious. They're killing people, they are hammering trying to shut down the protests. And in the process, according to some reports, even more than 6,000 people have already been killed so far. There are reports that whenever the officials find anybody with a Starlink connection, they are shooting them and executing them on the spot. But remember these kind of news items are also often generated. Even reliable Western media sources like the New York Times, etc., cannot be trusted when it comes to the Middle East, because they always err on the side of the US and Israel. So if you remember all the shenanigans that the New York Times did in its reporting when the Iraq war happened. So we have to be very careful what the Western media is saying. They probably are exaggerating what is happening, and they are overestimating the extent to which the Iranian regime is about to collapse. On the other hand, the reports coming out of Iran simply cannot be trusted absolutely at all. They are fighting for the regime's survival, and they are going to use every tactics, including narrative building and media manipulation to their advantage. There are no other alternative sources of information where we can really rely on. But nevertheless, I think that Iran is facing a major crisis since it has faced since 1979. This new generation of Iranians have not seen a good life at all for a long time. Their country has been more or less pariah, has very few friends, and basically it's very depressing. You do everything right, and yet there are no pathways to a better future. So this is what the Iranians are demanding. They want a pathway to a better future. They want a decent life. They want freedom, and their government is not providing that, because the government is more interested in ideological goals. It wants to militarily dominate the Middle East. It wants to fight for Gaza, but not for its own citizens. So I think that is my second observation, that they have a highly irresponsible government. I do have a question about what Islamists and Islamic governments have achieved in this century, but that's towards the end. So hang in there. I have something very important to say about Islamic governments. My third observation is that things are not getting better because of US and Israeli intervention. Israelis have openly, Israeli ministers are bragging as to how they are responsible for the protest that is going on, giving the Iranian government essentially a credible excuse to say that, oh, the people in Iran are not really upset with their government. It is just that the Israelis are inciting these protests. These are not real protests. These are fake protests triggered by the Israelis. And the Americans are inciting them. Donald Trump constantly is saying, please keep protesting and help is coming your way and I will send military, etc. The Iranians have killed over 6,000. Trump has done nothing so far to stop them from doing that. There are new sanctions that the Europeans are imposing, but those sanctions are not going to help the people. It'll actually exacerbate their suffering. It'll help the government and the government officials and the friends who actually take advantage of the sanctions to personally benefit. My third observation is this, that the US and Israel are definitely playing a role, and it kind of delegitimizes it, given the history of the West in Iran. So, for example, in 1953, the Ajax operation was run by the MI6 and the CIA. So, US and UK essentially overturned a democratically elected government and installed a monarchy. Now, there's a lot of chatter about reinstalling the Pahlavis and replacing whatever Iran has with another Israel-friendly monarchy. That's the key thing. What America wants in Iran is an Israel-friendly government. In fact, by Israel-friendly, it means something that is subservient to the Israeli interests. That's what they have in UAE. That's what they have in Jordan. That's what they have in Egypt. They want the same elsewhere, in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey, in Iran, in Pakistan, etc. So in many ways, you could say that the US is essentially an Israeli proxy in the Middle East. When it comes to Middle East, there's no MAGA, there's no America first. The US is, I'm sorry to say that my country is essentially, its foreign policy is completely dictated by another country. So it's kind of muddling the things. There are many Iranians who actually are buying the government's narrative that this is being triggered just by Israel and the US, and is delegitimizing the protesters. And if the protests fail, then there will be very serious repression and repercussions for those who will now be labeled as traitors who have worked with Israel. So there will be a prolonged period of repression. That's what I really, really fear, that anybody that the Iranian government does not like, anybody who protests, anybody who defies, anybody who dissents will immediately be treated like an agent of the Israeli government in Iran. If this protest end without a fundamental shift in the power structure of Iran. That's my third observation. And my fourth observation is, where is the rest of the world? India talks about being the voice of the global South. India is mum. India is just panicking about the 25% tariffs that Trump is posting on those who trade with Iran. The Chinese haven't done much. Occasionally they will say something saying, do not intervene, do not violate sanctions. But, Trump went into Venezuela and actually kidnapped the president of a sovereign country, and now he's promising to intervene in the domestic politics of another sovereign country, and the Russians and the Chinese are doing nothing. So this fourth observation is essentially about the global order. All of those people who were talking about that this is a multipolar world, this doesn't look like a multipolar world. This looks like a unipolar world in the rest of the world, where America does whatever it wants with no consequences either from international law, international organizations, or any coalition out there. If this was a multipolar world, then Donald Trump would not be able to get away with everything that he's doing in foreign policy. In the Middle East, it's a bipolar world, but it's a kind of a different kind of a bipolarity. It's not that they are poles, but there are two hegemons, that the US and Israel together, or Israel using the US as its proxy, continues to dominate the Middle East, increasingly so after the wars that it has fought against Lebanon, destroyed Hezbollah, and weakened Iran significantly. Iran talks a lot, threatens a lot, delivers nothing. So all those military threats, I don't think anybody in Washington or Tel Aviv are taking seriously from Iran. But nobody is stepping forward to stop the massacres either, and that is my problem. Why isn't a country like India or China or Russia taking some initiative, or Brazil? Iran is now a member of SCO. Uh, I don't remember now. I think it's also part of BRICS. So why isn't these organizations stepping forward to bring about some kind of reconciliation within the world? Are they just going to stand there and watch what is happening? And so that's my fourth observation as to really what is the rest of the world doing. We know what the West is doing. Europe has imposed new sanctions on the regime, so they're indirectly punishing the protesters and their families and the others. And the US is essentially talking big, and the Israelis. I tend to believe that Israelis are also involved in these protests. They have shown that they have completely penetrated the Iranian regime. The way they killed Hania, the Hamas leader, they killed him in IRGC's guest house. They knew that he was going to be there. They had a bomb planted there 3 months in advance to take him out. The way they destroyed Hezbollah. So it clearly shows that the Iranian regime is completely sold out to the Israelis. The Israelis can do whatever they like inside Iran. And so if they want to repeat of 1953, this time the US and Iran rather than US and UK they have the intelligence capability to make that happen if there is a segment that is genuinely disenchanted with the government. And that is an important part, that, look, if the people are happy with the government, then it's impossible to trigger this kind of systematic protest nationwide. People are coming out there. They know people are dying, but they're still protesting because the status quo is unbearable. People would rather die than live in Iran as it is today. So there is clearly discontent in the population, and there should be. I mean, it just makes sense. A country where is completely isolated, alienated from the rest of the world. Nobody trades with it. There are sanctions which are completely crippling it. On top of that, you have a government that does not allow you cultural freedoms and is more busy with international agenda than domestic welfare and well-being. So I understand that there is genuine opportunity for change in Iran, but will the intervention from external forces like the US and Israel actually undermine the chances of change in Iran? That's what we need to wait and see. The three questions that really I have are these. Number one, there is no alternative to this government. It has been in power, the Iranian regime, since 1979. It hasn't allowed any political parties, alternatives to emerge. So there are neither secular forces, nor secular leaders, nor moderates. There are there, but they are also part of the same system. So there are no advocates for democracy, a liberal-style democracy, rather than whatever Iran calls as Islamic democracy. So at least if you look at what happened in, say, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, there were alternatives. There is BNP and Jamaat Islami in Bangladesh to Awami League. So there is a chance that these parties will be able to take over once the elections happen. And it is not as chaotic as you might have in Iran, where there is no leadership. Who will take over if tomorrow the regime is overturned? Let's say the soldiers turn against the government, or whatever happens and this regime falls, what happens next? That is my first question, and I think there is no alternative. If the Americans and the Israelis go in and install some kind of a puppet from here who will basically take its diktats from Tel Aviv, then I can guarantee you it will be worse than Iraq. There will be lots and lots of harm because the Iranians are not going to accept that. Iranians in the diaspora may are so hateful of their own government and their own country that they will do anything, and they may be subservient to Israel, but they're not going to go and live in Iran. So my next question is, what is next in Iran? Who will take over from? I don't have an answer, and I haven't heard an answer from anybody else. My second question is, what happens if these protests fail? And there is still some change, that this regime becomes more dictatorial, becomes more militaristic, more authoritarian, and more suppressive and less open. Because if the regime survival is a goal, and now they feel that there is a serious threat for the regime survival domestically, and that a large segment of its population is now connected to America and Israel, then there will be a very, very bad time for the Israelis, I fear. But the question is, what will the world do if this protest also fizzles out like the 2022 and 2009 protests that have happened in Iran before? My third question is, we need to have a serious dialogue, and this is a question primarily for Muslims who advocate the creation of an Islamic state. What have Islamic governments delivered for Muslims? Take the case of Iran, the first major success for Islam is they established a state. It became the laboratory for Islamic governance. And what did it deliver? Repression, suppression. It did not become. Iran is a powerful, rich country with a tremendous human resources. And it missed the entire 3 decades of globalization. If Iran was integrated in the global economy, it would have been better than some of the more developed European countries, for sure. People would have had happier and more freer lives. So what has the Iranian Islamic revolution delivered for Iran? Look at the Taliban. Half the population is suffering. The women have been shut out from public life, from education, no work, no education, and no play, nothing. They are prisoners in their own country, in their own homes. And what has Hamas in Gaza delivered? Triggered a violence, gave justification. Israelis committed a genocide, don't get me wrong. I'm not exonerating Israel at all. It's one of the worst human crimes against humanity, and the history should record that. But the question also should be asked, what did Hamas deliver to the people of Gaza? What did the Islamic regime in Iran deliver to the people of Iran? And what did the Taliban deliver to the people of Afghanistan? What is this talk of an Islamic state? The purpose of any government is to work for the welfare of its citizens. It should provide them as much benefits as it can. It should provide them with opportunity to achieve their dreams. It should give them cultural freedom, freedom of conscience. Protect them, not become a threat to them. And this is a very serious question that Muslims who, especially those who advocate the establishment of Islamic State, we have to implement the Sharia. And to what end? And look at the different understanding of what Sharia is. What the Iranians think is Sharia is so different from what the Taliban think and what the Saudis think. So I think this is time to start the dialogue also about what is the record of these so-called Islamic governments and what have they delivered to their citizens. So I hope you found this conversation interesting, thought-provoking. So please, if you have not already subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and do share this video with your social political network. If there are some interesting questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will take your leave. Sagar says, violence in Iran is exaggerated and mostly funded or sponsored by Mossad and CIA. I was listening to Alistair Cook and Scott Ritter yesterday. It seems that the world already knows what is happening. Well, partly, but like I was saying, why would Iranians go out there and die for Israel? And even if they're getting paid to do that, why will they die? There are so many Iranians, unless you're saying that nobody has died in Iran and the protests are not really happening. So if the US and Israelis are triggering, by the way, Scott Ritter and others have made a lot of claims about Iran, especially during the war, that Iran will destroy Israel, Iran will do this, Iran will do that. Iran did nothing. Iran got smashed. And so I don't take Scott Ritter seriously at all. I'm sorry. I have seen some of his shows. Yes, sadly, that is true. Everyone will interfere in their national interests and then claim that, oh, we did this for humanitarian reasons. You're right. Sorry, it's a bit cynical, but true. What dear Khan, you must remember Allah, not a fool or like us, and whatever. Iran was coming to Allah. I don't know what this rubbish is. All right. So, not many questions. So thank you for watching Conversations. Like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtada Khan. Take care.